Hey, y'all need a break. Listen to these stories from r/AskReddit. What's a not safe for work history fact that we don't often hear about? Julius Wagner Jauregg won the 1927 Nobel Prize for Medicine by giving people malaria. The fever from the malaria would go so high that it could kill off an otherwise untreatable syphilis infection. Left untreated, syphilis could lead to insanity, so it was a pretty bad thing. In comparison, having malaria, which we had treatments for, was a blessing. In the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan's wife could only eat her cucumbers chopped, so that she doesn't self-pleasure. In July 1184, Henry VI, King of Germany, later Holy Roman Emperor, held court at a Hoftag in the Petersburg citadel in Erfurt. On the morning of July 26, the combined weight of the assembled nobles caused the wooden second-story floor of the Peterskirche to collapse, and most of them fell through into the latrine cesspit below the ground floor, where about 60 of them drowned in liquid excrement. There is a man named Eben Byers who is entombed in Pittsburgh's Allegheny National Cemetery. He was a golf pro and socialite who ended up being the victim of quack medicine. He consumed so much Radithor, radium dissolved in water, that just prior to his death his jaw literally eroded off of his face. His mausoleum has him in a lead coffin because he's still radioactive. Ammonia-rich fumes from a castle's toilet system were used to delouse clothes inside special closets. The real reason you stand aside when royalty walks by. Napoleon's wife had a friend who was known as government property because she had banged so many ministers of state. After Napoleon's death, it's been alleged, and told to me by a historian at Les Invalides, that his genitals was cut off and sold and exhibited through the early 20th century. It was described in 1927 as resembling a piece of leather or a shriveled eel. Same goes for Rasputin's genitals. But it was an anaconda. William C. Minor, one of the contributing writers of the Oxford English Dictionary, chopped off his genitals using the pocket knife he used to cut the bound pages of his old first edition book. Ah, that's why it's called dictionary. Rome lost as many soldiers in one battle as the United States lost in the entirety of the Vietnam War. It was the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC against Hannibal. And this was back when the entire world population was tiny compared to what it is now. Rome lost 20% of its adult male population in a single day. Edit, Extra Credits did a great series on the Punic Wars. And won the war. That's the craziest part. Effers didn't stop. You kill 20% of males, we'll come back with the other 80%. At the beginning of World War II, in Great Britain, over 750,000 domestic animals were euthanized out of fear that rations would be spread too thin and pet abandonment would lead to masses of strays. The National Air Raid Precautions Animal Committee, NARPAC, sent pamphlets out to homes suggesting that people should send their pets to the countryside or, kindly, have them destroyed. This later became known as the British Pet Massacre. It used to be thought that blowing smoke up someone's ass was a way to revive them. Some swimming pools actually had a kit, with a bellows-type device, that blows smoke up the ass of a drowning victim. Edited, to clarify tobacco smoke. Romans used to execute criminals in the Colosseum by recreating myths. A woman was essayed to death by a specially trained bull, Pasiphae. A man was given wings and thrown across the Colosseum, Icarus. Another was made to play an instrument and then be torn apart by animals, Orpheus, and many, many more. Edit, the main source is Martial, De Spectaculis. I'm uninterested in debating his reliability when he wrote the piece to commemorate specific events that had anywhere between 50 to 87,000 eyewitnesses. Writers tend to fail when the entire city calls them out for making stuff up. The CIA gave unsuspecting civilians LSD and then observed their interactions with hookers, paid informants, while under the influence, for experimental purposes. This operation was called Midnight Climax. Edit, for clarity. Added sources for your infotainment. Didn't the author of Frankenstein lose her virginity on her mother's grave? I went to the Mary Shelley Museum/experience in Bath the other day and her life is effing nuts from start to finish. James Joyce had a fart fetish. He often wrote about it in letters to his lover. You had an arse full of farts that night, darling, and I effed them out of you. Big fat fellows, long windy ones, quick little merry cracks and a lot of tiny little naughty farties ending in a long gush from your hole. It is wonderful to eff a farting woman when every F drives one out of her. John R. Brinkley was an American doctor who would surgically implant goat testicles into men's scrotums to cure impotence. His story gets crazier from there. If not for a technicality, he would have won the 1930 election for governor of Kansas. A lake in every county and goat testicles in every scrotum. Anton Leeuwenhoek, the father of microscopy, used his invention, the microscope, on his own sperm after one night with his wife. Sperm was unknown at the time and he thought they were little people. Imagine the existential crisis you'd have after that one. Boston Corbett, the guy who killed John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's assassin, was a raging lunatic who cut his own balls off with a pair of scissors after passing a couple of prostitutes on the street. He did not seek medical attention after he did that until after he had gone to a prayer meeting and had dinner. He also escaped from an insane asylum on horseback and was never seen again. His name was Thomas H. Boston Corbett, and it's widely thought that his mental issues were caused/exacerbated by exposure to chemicals necessary in hat making, which was his profession several times in his life, specifically mercury-3 nitrate. This was a common enough affliction and is where we get the phrase, mad as a hatter. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh would periodically self-pleasure into the Nile as a ritual of sorts to guarantee good harvests. I work in museums, and there are a lot of ancient Egyptian pieces with guys walking with huge boners that rarely go on display, but I come across in storage rooms. Brazilian emperor built a huge personal library just so he could freely shag his mistresses without being bothered. The Mongols had a rule: you're not allowed to kill the leader of a country, or city-state, by piercing their skin. So they came up with ingenious ways of killing people. There were stories of a potential Khan that boiled a man alive. Other stories include pouring molten gold down a man's throat. Though not necessarily not safe for work, Genghis Khan gave cities the option of surrendering, or face the option of killing every man, woman, and child in that city. He would literally genocide everyone in that city because the ruler wanted to fight back. And that's how Genghis Khan killed 10% of the world's population at that time, 20 to 40 million people. When the future Edward VII balked at his mistress's accounts saying, "Madam, I have spent enough on you to build a battleship," she replied, "And you have spent enough in me to float one." Hawaiian kings commonly had harems of both male and female lovers. The first European to make a Hawaiian to English dictionary didn't want to scandalize his Victorian readers, so translated the term for the male lovers to something like intimate friend. This caused some degree of confusion when missionaries arrived asking to become the intimate friends of the Hawaiian nobility. Buddhist monk from Bhutan Drukpa Kunli was known for his crazy methods of enlightening other beings, mostly women, which earned him the title, the Saint of 5,000 Women. Among other things, women would seek his blessing in the form of intercourse. His intention was to show that it is possible to be enlightened, impart enlightenment, and still lead a very healthy intercourse life, and to demonstrate that celibacy was not necessary for being enlightened. Because of this power to awaken unenlightened beings, Kunli's genitals are referred to as the thunderbolt of flaming wisdom, and he himself is known as the fertility saint. For this reason, women from all around the world visited his monastery to seek his blessing. Some of his most famous performances include urinating on sacred dankas, stripping down naked, or offering his testicles to a famous lama. He is one of very few Buddhist teachers to almost always appear in Bhutanese paintings topless. It is known that Drukpa Kunli would not bless anyone who came to seek his guidance and help, unless they brought a beautiful woman and a bottle of wine. President Lyndon B. Johnson was obsessed with his genitals and used it to control those around him. He gave it the nickname, Jumbo. He'd threaten senators by saying he was gonna sleep with their wives, and if he went to the bathroom in the middle of a conversation, he expected the other person to follow him into the bathroom to continue the conversation and would get upset if they tried to just wait outside. Sometimes he would swing around while standing at a urinal and talking to someone, leaving his genitals exposed. He also drove himself around on his ranch and stopped to pee on the side of the road, so the Secret Service agents had to cover him, and there was a gust of wind that blew the pee onto one of the agent's legs, and Johnson said that it was his prerogative to pee on the agent's leg. Journalists once asked him, why continue the war in Vietnam, and he sent all the women out of the room, took his genitals out, flopped it on the table and said, "This is why." Ancient Rome was covered in male genitals. All around Pompeii, excavators discovered phallic symbols, from intricately carved 3D male genitals, to scribbled graffiti on street corners, above bread ovens, outside houses, in bathhouses, literally genitals everywhere. When Pompeii was discovered in the 1700s, this fact was suppressed by puritanical types in the church. Italians of the area now use chili peppers as a replacement symbol, including as a necklace pendant you will see everywhere. Of course, peppers didn't exist in Europe until Columbus returned from the New World. So chili pepper now equates to male genitals in southern Italy, and if you walk around Pompeii, look out for all the genitals. There was a birth control plant in Roman times, but it went extinct because the Romans did a certain action too much. The action was intercourse, and they used the plant so much it went extinct. There used to be a parasite in ancient Egypt which caused boys and men to bleed through their genitals. Apparently, it was so common among men that ancient Egyptian thought that men had periods. How Cleopatra once seduced another country's ruler by posing naked in a rolled-up carpet and having her servants unroll her as a gift in the ruler's chamber. Can't remember exact details, but something along those lines. Yep, Julius Caesar was the dude. And she didn't just seduce him, she pretty much got him to dethrone her brother and make the new queen of Egypt. She would regularly visit him in Rome for several years until his assassination. There was a ritual that is believed to have taken place towards the end of the Viking era while people were still pagan just before Christianity took over. A horse member is chopped off, wrapped in linen and onions, to preserve it, and people would recite poetry to it. Edit, some top-notch replies to this, having a right good laugh. The British Academy of Science redacted massive amounts of the first published observations of penguins by biologists. Penguins are the worst. So much non-consensual intercourse. So much intercourse with the dead. The Academy decided the public wouldn't handle it well. They didn't put that in Happy Feet. Fun fact, the guy who made the 2 Happy Feet films said, if you put a gun to my head and said, you have to come up with a story for Happy Feet 3, I'd say, shoot me. People think that Vlad the Impaler stuck people with spikes through the guts, but that isn't what impaling is. It's so much worse. First you get a thick log, maybe 1.5 fists thick. Then you carve the tip into a blunt bullet shape. Too sharp and the spike will go through the victim too fast. Too blunt, and the victim won't be properly impaled. You grease up the spike with lard. You insert the bullet-shaped end into the victim's anus. You push it into at least a foot or more is in the victim. Then you haul them up. If you've calculated everything right, then the victim will remain alive, twitching, and completely unable to stop what is happening to him or her. Yes, this happened to women too, 4 days. Ultimately, the spike will erupt from the upper chest, back, or head. Fortunately, the victim will have died before then. The Sultan's army entered into the area of the impalements, which was 17 stades long and 7 stades wide. There were large stakes there on which, as it was said, about 20,000 men, women, and children had been spitted, quite a sight for the Turks and the Sultan himself. The Sultan was seized with amazement and said that it was not possible to deprive of his country a man who had done such great deeds, who had such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his realm and its people. And he said that a man who had done such things was worth much. The rest of the Turks were dumbfounded when they saw the multitude of men on the stakes. There were infants too affixed to their mothers on the stakes, and birds had made their nests in their entrails. I would rather be stuck through the guts with a spear than suffer actual impalement. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.